Rebuild, a Fins podcast with Ty and Cass.
Welcome, Dolphin fans, to another episode of the Rebuild podcast. You know the drill. We're going to talk all things Miami Dolphins football. I am your host today, Tyler. Unfortunately, Cass is not with me today, so I'm going to be riding solo. Before we get started, go ahead and follow us on Twitter at Rebuild the Fins. Also, go ahead and scan that QR code to directly go to our YouTube channel. Please like, subscribe, follow, get all the up-to-date news and alerts on our podcast. Want to mention, like our last episode, exciting things coming. Omar Kelly from the Miami Herald, Miami Dolphin columnist, has agreed to come onto our podcast as soon as we reach 2,500 total views. So again, please follow our YouTube. Please go on our videos. I'm very excited for that episode to come. Have a lot of questions for him. Respect his opinion, and again, be a fantastic episode to get on here. And we appreciate all the support. Do want to also shout out David for that new intro. Please leave your comments what you think of that. So we're excited to kind of bring that to you guys and get a little more official, I guess you would say. So we're excited. But why don't we go ahead and get started? There was finally some breaking news happening today for the Miami Dolphins that we've kind of been waiting for, as we're probably all well aware of now. Tyreek Hill, James Daniels, Bradley Chubb, and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine all officially cut from the Dolphins. Now, the Bradley Chubb one wasn't officially announced by the team because I think they're still determining on that pre or post June 1st cut. But again, it's official. He will not be part of the Miami Dolphins next year. So I'll get to Tyreek at the end because I want to kind of talk a little bit more about him. Bradley Chubb, again, actually had a really good year for us. I believe 8 sacks, definitely made some plays. But, his injury history, obviously the money that he would be, getting, it was so obvious that he was not going to be with us. The one thing with him that really bothers me, and again, I know it was not the regime that we currently have in place, but there were reports that they were looking to trade him in the trade deadline last year in November and did not make that move, which made zero sense. They obviously traded Jalen Phillips away to the Eagles. I believe they got a 3rd-round pick for him. Again, if you knew Bradley Chubb was not going to be on this team next year, again, Chris Greer was already gone at that point. So you kind of had that transition period. It obviously seemed that Mike McDaniel and, the interim GM were probably trying to save their jobs. They didn't want to just get rid of everyone, which I get. But, man, you guys got to have a little more kind of foreshadowing. Like, you knew this guy was not going to be here. The season was already over. The season was lost. I don't think Bradley Chubb was moving the needle much one way or the other in terms of win losses for this franchise. Again, he had a decent year last year, but overall he was, he was injured through his tenure. He looked slow a lot of the times. And me particular, I was, very hard on him personally. I don't think he had that first step that we saw, years prior before he got to the Dolphins. We traded away a lot for him. Again, he had a good year last year, but again, overall, just was not part of the future of this team. The other one, James Daniels, the guy we signed last year, he played 3 snaps for us. So, we didn't really miss anything because he didn't play. I was a little surprised. Offensive line is obviously something that we are thin at and, something that we're always looking to improve. I thought maybe if they had a restructure or whatnot, maybe there was some way he would stay. But again, his injury history that he's had over his career just didn't make sense. John Eric Sullivan's going to definitely want to bring in his guys, specifically at guard, and just the offensive line in general to kind of fit the mold that they're looking to go for. So again, this one, no problem, but I thought maybe because of the position, maybe they could have potentially kept him or try to do some other things. The other one, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, the guy he had 11 receptions for us. He didn't do much on the team last year. Again, I think Mike, I like the idea that they brought him in. He was a bigger body receiver. Specifically, the year prior, we struggled with that. Obviously, with Tyreek, Waddle, Achan, some of the smaller guys that we have. I like the idea that they were trying to bring in a bigger body receiver, specifically in the goal line, because I know fans hated when they would throw goal line fade routes to Tyreek Hill, who's like 5'4" or whatever he is. So I like the idea. It just didn't work out. Again, James Daniels and Westbrook Ikini, they just didn't make enough plays or even play in that way for the Dolphins last year. So again, don't really have a problem with with these cuts. And let's go to Tyreek. Clearly, obviously, did not have a problem with that cut. That was obviously expected. The amount of money, the cap savings for him coming off a major injury, which I was actually there. Took my son to his first Miami Dolphin game against the Jets when Tyreek destroyed his leg. The energy of that building when that happened, just you can hear pin drops, man. It was wild. I think that was obviously devastating. Tyreek was a fantastic player for us on the field over his 4 years with us, of course. But again, don't have a problem with the Tyreek thing. He's recovering, like I said, from that major leg injury. You know, he was by far, at least for me, he was. I mean, he was a cheetah, man. He was a dog. I mean, he was the best player that we've had on this team in a long time. He had two fantastic years with the Miami Dolphins. I wish him nothing but the best. Obviously on the field. I think with him, a lot of the off the field issues definitely caught up. Got kind of repetitive with a lot of the things he was doing. Again, I don't really want to talk about all those things. Again, I'm not supportive of any of those things that he's done, of course. But in terms of on the field, in terms of production, I mean, he wreaked havoc on the defenses when he was on the field. Teams had to obviously figure out exactly where he was at all times. Obviously, in 2023, he had that magical year along with Tua. And again, I am sad to see him go. But obviously, the position that we're in by the regime, we didn't really have a choice. But again, I think Tyreek Hill for the Miami Dolphins. Yeah, sure. The Kansas City Chiefs won Super Bowls without him, but I think the the move when they made that move, they went all in. They were in 2023. Obviously, had a great year. They had a couple years where they had a chance to win their first playoff game in 25 years as it is today. So again, it obviously worked out very well with the Chiefs. Of course, I think for us, you got to at least give the previous regime. They did try. They tried to get those guys. It worked for a couple years. It was speed, speed, speed. McDaniel had worked, but again, and then eventually the rails fell off. So it is what it is. Tyreek Hill's most likely going to play again, obviously, as he's rehabbing. But again, it is sad to see him go, just because he was so electrifying on the field, and he was one of the reasons why this Dolphin team was fun to watch. So obviously, this is the start of the official transitioning to the new regime. Obviously, these moves, obviously more moves to come. What are they going to do with Austin Jackson? What are they going to do with Minka Fitzpatrick? There's still a lot of moves to be made. And of course, the big domino of Tua Tagovailoa. What are they going to do with him? Obviously they're going to try to trade him. It's highly unlikely that's going to happen. So, how are they going to cut him? Are they going to do it a pre or post June 1st? Obviously, to me, the Tua Tagovailoa thing is by far the biggest domino, and that will kind of guide us of what 2026 is going to look like in terms of, do they think they can at least be competitive, or are they really just trying to load up for 2027 and going from there? So before we get more into that, because we will dive deep a little more on the quarterback position in later episodes, I wanted to talk about a little bit about the NFL draft. And as you guys know, we're at pick 11 this year, coming up in April. I think that it makes the most logical sense to go ahead and trade down in the draft. Why? Because if John Eric Sullivan has said over and over and over, we're going to be heavy in drafts. We're going to draft, and we're going to retain our own. They're going to need to acquire more picks, especially in the 2027 draft, which is going to be a very important draft class, specifically in the quarterback position, as we assume based off the people that are eligible to come in that draft class. So at pick 11, you're kind of in that middle ground where you're not going to be able to get that quarterback. Obviously, we know this year there's really only one quarterback that people like this year, and he's obviously going to go first overall to the Raiders. So you're kind of stuck in that 11 position. We have so many needs, offensive line, you know, defensive backs. I mean, we have needs across all sorts, all over the field. So I feel like that makes a lot of sense to move back and try to get as much draft capital as possible for 2026 and in 2027. So you might ask, who are those teams that could make some sense to move up to 11 with the Miami Dolphins? The one team that I put down was the LA Rams. The LA Rams, I believe, are at 13 this year. They have 13 and 26, I believe, or somewhere in they have 2 first round picks this year. The Rams are in win now mode, as we know. Matt Stafford just had an MVP season. They're a team that can obviously win the Super Bowl. So, Matt Stafford doesn't have that many more years left, even though he just won the MVP. Some say he can keep playing for a very long time, but he's on his last leg, playing fantastic football. Obviously, if they feel like they can get a game changer playmaker, whoever, maybe that's receiver, maybe that's a defensive, whoever it may be that they feel like is a missing piece to get them over the hump to win another Super Bowl, that could be a team that makes a lot of sense. And again, if you're the Dolphins, you're moving back, you move a few slots. I think you said they're at 13, swap picks there. Maybe you can get another pick in 2027 for that. I mean, listen, I'm totally fine moving down with the intentions of getting more draft capital, still picking a player of need whenever that may be, whether it's 13 or 18 or whatever it may be, and just trying to build through this draft. The other team that I think makes a lot of sense too is the Minnesota Vikings. Again, I believe they're at 18. Let me just double check here. That makes a lot of sense too, as they're with a coach that is obviously win now, and their quarterback situation, and they're trying to get players obviously that are impact players. Again, that could be a team that makes a lot of sense that could potentially move up. And again, all these points for the Dolphin purposes of just trying to gain as much capital as possible. Let me just confirm the Vikings draft pick here, because again, I think that would be a team that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, they're at pick 18, so again, that could be a swap of again 11 to 18. What would be the capital for the Dolphins in that play? I think that probably gets you a pick in 2026, maybe a second or third round, and then obviously another pick in 2027 with that swap, because again, that's a big jump from move down. The other team too at pick 19 would be the Carolina Panthers. Again, another team that made the playoffs. Have some good players, and looking to take that next step. Again, if there's people that they believe that they can get at 11 that are impact players for them, that can get them moving in the needle to making a more of a playoff push next season, the Miami Dolphins are open for business, in my opinion. They need to really maximize the opportunities to move down in this draft and get as much capital as possible, because again, in 2027, that is the year, as this rebuild's kind of starting to take shape. That's going to be that year where we're going to hopefully start competing, and we're going to have to hit on some of these draft picks. And the more picks we have, obviously, the more ammunition we potentially can have. So again, I think it's going to be very interesting what we're going to do in the draft. Obviously, this is what Sully was brought in for. He is a scout by heart, as we mentioned on other episodes. But again, the first domino fell today with some of these cuts. The Tua thing is lingering. I saw a report that they're not going to drag this out. This is going to be something that is going to happen. The Tua portion I'm talking about is going to be done, I would say, before free agency starts, which is, I believe, March 11th officially. I think March 9th is the legal tampering period. This is going to be done before that. Why? Because we all kind of have an idea of links for the quarterback position that we're going to be trying to do, which is Malik Willis, and we'll talk about that a little later. But that's going to get wrapped up. And regarding the Tua portion, like I said earlier, to me, all these moves that they made today, the Tyreeks, the Chubbs, the Daniels, and the Westbrook Keeney moves, these are moves that we were all expecting. And there'll be more. Like I said, I believe Austin Jackson will get cut. I think Minka Fitzpatrick won't be back, again, during this rebuild. The big domino is the Tua portion. And again, we all expect he's obviously not going to be back here, but how are they going to utilize what they're going to do with him? Are they going to trade him? Obviously, that is their preference, according to reports. And, obviously everyone knows that that's what they would want to do. But the problem is it's very unlikely someone is going to take on Tua's contract. The history, it's not likely. We're going to have to obviously pay a big portion of his salary. We're probably going to have to give them a third or fourth round pick, which again, I think we would do that. I still just don't think a team is going to take on Tua as a trade candidate. Everyone knows the NFL, they're going to cut him. I don't really see a desperate team looking for Tua services. So again, the big portion of this is, are they going to take his $99 million cap hit all in one season, this upcoming season in 2026, or are they going to break it up over the next 2 seasons? And the reason why, to me, that is the telltale sign of how 2026 is going to go is because if they go ahead and take that $99 million cap hit and they just take it all this year, take it all the lumps, and by 2027, we are free and we are officially in a good spot with cap space and, moves and whatnot. That tells me that the Malik Willis thing and going after, that type of quarterback who's going to command, not a lot of money in the quarterback standards, but in terms of where we're at, it's going to be asking for the 20 to $30 million range per year, most likely. I think that puts us out of that position because we're just going to not be in that position to, make those type of moves. So what does that mean? You're going to go Quinn Ewers. You're going to draft somebody this year, and potentially you go with the, Will Levis, Trey Lance, Marcus Mariota route, which to me, that tells me that 2026 is going to be a year where we win 3 to 4 games, and we have a top 5 pick in 2027, which we most likely are probably going to win very little games, even probably with Malik Willis because of this roster. But I think that would at least tell me that this team is, although they're not going to say they're tanking and, they're not going to try to lose, of course, but I just don't think that they're going to have enough to actually win the games with the tough schedule that we have. Now, again, if the Miami Dolphins decide to break up the Tua contract over the couple seasons, I think Malik Willis is very much in play. And it's something that where they're going to go after Malik Willis, who they know very well. They know his strengths. They know his weaknesses. They've been with him. Jeff Halfley obviously has been with him, this past season with, the scout team and stuff like that. So to me, that tells me that they are going to try to compete and win games and, try to make some noise in the AFC playoff picture. Will it happen? Obviously I don't know, but I think that just gives you the mindset of where this team goes. So when that Tua news happens, whichever route they decide to do, that is really going to be your kind of game plan, floor plan, et cetera, of the 2026 season and beyond. So that is really going to be the biggest domino, which we really don't know which, route they're going. They've been very close to the vest, as they should be. Jeff Halfley, John Eric Sullivan was at a Miami Dolphin, I think, fan, gathering last week and, was asked this question, and they basically have talked to Tua. They told him, when, you're going to be the first person to find out. And obviously, but I think then he said they're not going to, this isn't going to drag along. So that news is going to be coming very soon. And, again, that will be breaking news because I think, we're split as the Dolphin community of how we feel they should kind of take action. To me, as you guys know, you follow me on Twitter, you hear my comments and stuff. I love Malik Willis. I think he is a high upside quarterback. But again, I think either way, I would be fine with it. If they take the $99 million and just take it this year, I'm totally okay with that because that will give us, this year is going to be rough anyway. And in 2027, we're going to, be off and running with this new rebuild. The Malik Willis, again, to me, just brings a lot of hope, little upside with him. He showed a lot of flashes. So I'm good either way. But, let me know in the comments what you guys think we should do with Tua. Should we cut him and take the hit right away, or should we break it up over two seasons and kind of see how things go? Going back to the quarterback position, speaking of Malik Willis, a lot of reports have been coming out of teams like the Arizona Cardinals, the New York Jets. I saw the Pittsburgh Steelers potentially, depending on what Aaron Rodgers is doing. These teams are in much, much better positions to offer the type of money that Malik Willis is going to most likely want in free agency. Like I said, we talked about everyone's kind of linking that Justin Fields contract to what Malik Willis was, which I agree that that's where it should be. I believe Justin Fields got 20 million a year over 20 million per year for 2 years, I believe. So it was 2 year, $40 million with the New York Jets. I agree with that. I think that Malik Willis has such a small sample size that is someone where I think is going to kind of should be in that position. But man, this quarterback class of free agency is very light. And I think that teams who are desperate for quarterbacks, as we are, as the New York Jets are, as the Arizona Cardinals are, because all reports are that they're moving on with Kyler Murray. The Steelers have needed a quarterback. What does Aaron Rodgers do? These teams can offer more to Malik Willis, even though that our connections with Malik Willis make too much sense for him and for us, obviously. It's starting to worry me a little bit that we're just going to get outbid, which is okay. Because again, I'm not paying Malik Willis $40 million a year, $35 million a year. We're not in that position, nor do I want to do this for, a season or two when we most likely are going to be drafting a quarterback in 2027 to be our future. But to me, if we miss out on Malik Willis, what are our next options? What are the plans at quarterback other than Quinn Ewers? Because again, as you have seen multiple times in different interviews, Soley wants competition, specifically at the quarterback position. So you're going to draft someone this year, fine. Whoever that may be in the later rounds, third, fourth rounds, whatever it is, fine. But we're going to have to bring in a veteran quarterback. So to me, the quarterbacks that I like the most, other than Malik Willis, is going to be Will Levis or Trey Lance. Those are two guys that are still very young. Both have gone, obviously, Will Levis, starting quarterback, struggled, with turnovers with the Titans, but, has obviously been in the field. And same with Trey Lance, was highly picked by the 49ers, just didn't work out. Those are two guys that are young, that can move, specifically Will Levis, who I'm starting to – he's not going to cost much at all. He's literally going to cost nothing in the grand scheme of things. Is Will Levis someone that they, see as maybe an upside? Because again, I'm getting very worried, on the Malik Willis train of some team is going to get very desperate and they're going to overpay. And that leaves us out and we're going to have to pivot. And I'm trying to think of just guys that are young, that have mobility, that, maybe in a new system, a new change of scenery can, definitely, show some signs and compete for the job. So those are two names that I like. Again, go ahead. What do you guys think? What quarterbacks other than Malik Willis and Quinn Ewers do you think the Dolphins should go ahead and try to get in free agency? Because again, we're going to have to do that. I just don't see a way where we're not bringing in a free agent quarterback to compete for this job. So those are things that are going to be very, very interesting. This coming up here in the next month or so. But again, it is going back really quick to the Tyreek situation. Me personally, I want to kind of reflect a little bit just on his legacy in Miami. He had his best years in Miami. He did. Everyone's going to say, "Oh, he left the Chiefs and didn't win Super Bowls," and I get that. I'm not arguing that, but he had some monster years for us, and I think it's definitely a player that you don't see very often on this team. We don't get those guys. We always are getting guys that are past their prime or have injury history. I do think the Tyreek Hill thing definitely worked out overall for us for the for the 2 or 3 years that we were doing very well with in terms of win losses. So just a recap of his Miami Dolphin career: 54 total games, 340 receptions, over 4,700 receiving yards, 28 total touchdowns. He was a first team All Pro 2 times. And after the 2023 season, he was voted the #1 player by his peers. And I say peers because I feel like, um, you know, that has got to be a huge meaning for him. That his fellow teammates, fellow players in the league, showed respect, that he was the #1 player in that 2023 season. So again, he was a hell of a player for us. Just bought his jersey like an idiot, knowing he was not going to be with us. But it's kind of sad that the cheetah's out, and it's gonna be very important for the guys like Jalen Waddle and Malik, Washington, Devon Achan, assuming Waddle and Achan are going to stay, because there are reports that maybe they're looking to move them. It's Waddle time. It's the Penguin time. He's going to have to show that he's the #1 receiver, and I think he did that. I definitely think he showed signs that he can definitely be that guy, but he's going to have to stay on the field. He gets hurt a lot, I feel like, during games where he's missing plays and just tweak things, and he needs to stay on the field, and he needs to prove that he's the #1 receiver, which I think he can do. He has the speed. He runs great routes. I mean, he's a great player, but we need him to step up. And then Devon Achan, assuming he's staying, he's going to want a contract. They're going to have to feed him, feed the horse, get him the ball 20, 25 times, because he is a playmaker. He's the extension. He's the extension of the run and pass game. He can do both. I mean, he can catch the ball. He obviously can run very well outside the tackles. But he's a game wrecker, as we saw this past season. So those two guys are going to need to take a big step and kind of take that lead and kind of lead us into this new wave of the Miami Dolphins. The other player too is Malik Washington. Had some flashes for us last season. I thought when Tyreek went down that he was going to really step up, and he didn't take the leap that I was hoping for, because he kind of reminds me of the Jarvis Landry type player who kind of is gritty and kind of in the seam, where he makes a lot of catches in the seam. He can obviously have a lot of yards after the catch and just runs hard. So I'm hoping for him that he's going to take another step, because right now our another need that we need bad is receivers. I mean, like I said, we have Waddle, we have Malik Washington, I think we have Theo Weiss. I mean, we don't really have that many guys. So the draft is going to be important to getting one of those guys drafted in, and kind of building that room up. But as we all know, the Dolphins have a ton of needs. But again, Tyreek is officially that the cheetah is out for real this time, and it's time to move on. And again, there's going to be a lot of things going on here over the next couple of weeks. And we finally got some big news today, but that Tua domino is coming, and it's going to set the tone for the rest of the year. But again, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, follow us on Twitter, hit our YouTube channel, and we appreciate it. And guys, we'll see you next time. Okay.